like to welcome everyone for coming here today. I'd like to thank Ms. Marsh and her band class, Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Miller for being here today. Today our topic of discussion will be how attending international schools may affect a student's perspective on the world and might help prepare them for the future. Now today we have a few speakers speaking over different topics. We have Clay, thank you for being here today. He will be speaking about accepting cultures. We have Noel, who will be telling us about international exposing domestic students to different things. We have Eunice, who will tell us about how internationals may introduce us to new foods. We have Elizabeth, who might tell us about learning new languages, and I will be speaking over how being here helps international students with English, and Madison will be telling us about understanding accents. Clay, I hear you will be telling us about interacting with other cultures. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that now?
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like that knowing and interacting with friends from other cultures allows you personally to grow and become more accepting of other ethnicities and backgrounds and cultures. So I just kind of want to ask, most of us have international friends, am I right? Yeah, we basically all do. So I, along with the majority of you, have friends that come from other backgrounds than I do, and that by having these friends, I feel like that I'm more open and more accepting of, other ideas and things like that. And so if you look at different schools, I feel like that they have their own cliques and their own social groups, but the schools don't really promote going out of those groups and really talking to other people. But here, I feel like that the school and the student body goes out of their way to kind of accept everybody and try to get everybody interacting with one another. So if you look at our student body compared to others, we do have our own cliques and our own social groups. The soccer guys will go over here, the drama people over here. But, within all those groups, everybody kind of combines and becomes one, and, we all just kind of get along for the majority of things. So, I feel like this is due to the close interaction each student has with one another, no matter where they actually come from. So I went onto Google and sent out a form to a few of my friends, Tanner, Ryan, Brett, Howard, and Peyton, and I asked if they feel like they benefited from knowing friends from other places and backgrounds, and all of them did say that they think that it actually benefited them and kind of helped with their social skills. And so to kind of wrap it up, I just feel like that this school does help promote us to become kind of more of a accepting student body of one another, and I feel like that brings us kind of closer to each other. So not only does this school help promote a close family-like student body, but Noel, I think you will go ahead and explain how St. Paul exposes people to new customs brought by our international students.
Okay, so what I got out of that was that you believe international students make new friends, American friends, and help expand everyone's difference in people that they meet and stuff like that?
Yeah, not only does it help us, but it also does help them, I'm pretty sure, because, Howard, he's not from America, and he said the same thing, that it does help him with becoming more accepting.
Well, does anyone have any questions?
I have a comment on your cliques. I think that people do have cliques, but I think it's not really like cliques. It's more like friend groups. And friend groups can mix, and you can be parts of multiple friend groups. I'm in a friend group of girls in the dorms, but I'm also in a friend group in the drama club and different things. So I feel like it's really good that our school has a bunch of different ones, so people can be
Kind of just float around.
Yeah.
And Clay, I had a question. What is your personal clique? What would you call your main clique?
I don't really have one. I kind of just float.
You just float? Yeah. That's good. Well, thank you, Clay. Noel, I hear you will be telling us about how international students expose us to new customs and also exposes them.
Yes. I feel like attending an international school exposes students to people and customs they're not familiar with, which helps them prepare for a time when they won't be in a place that will be local and familiar. I asked 5 American dorm students, 1 freshman, 3 juniors, and a senior, questions about their experience of living in the dorms with international students, because 55% of the kids who live in our dorms are international. So almost every dorm student will experience something that they're not familiar with. And the students replied with that they've been exposed to so many different cultures like Chinese, Japanese, Central American, Vietnamese, Norwegian, African, Korean, Taiwanese, so many different ones. And they also said that these cultures have introduced them to new languages, food, clothing, music, and traditions. Like, for example, Brooke Lang said Willa, a student from Taiwan, taught her how to use chopsticks when her family took her to China Dragon. And when I asked what foods international cultures have introduced people to, Jessie Mueller said, Min, a student from Vietnam, makes bomb chicken wings. And I know Eunice is going to talk more about international foods, and I'm really excited to hear that. And Brett Miller said that he has been exposed to new music, especially a certain song that someone in the dorms, Cody, a student from Vietnam, plays very loudly every morning to wake up to. And every student that responded to my quiz said that living with international students has helped them prepare for the future and helped them experience all these different cultures. Mary Conkey said her experience with internationals, for example, rooming with a Norwegian, has made her a lot more empathetic and interested in other cultures. And Jessie Mueller said he has learned to be more understanding of other cultures and their different traditions. Caroline said that by spending time with internationals, she's learned that our cultures aren't as different as she thought. Her freshman year, a Norwegian asked what she was drinking, and she said hot chocolate. And then she went on to explain exactly what hot chocolate was. And when she got done, the Norwegian laughed at her and said, we have hot chocolate in Norway. And then Caroline was very embarrassed. But that experience helped her realize that, you know, just because they come from a different country doesn't mean they're completely different.
I can agree with you completely. I had no clue how to use chopsticks. And then Ricky T took me out to dinner at China Dragon and taught me how to use chopsticks, and I use it every time I go to eat Chinese in there. Well, does anyone have any questions for Noel?
Yeah, so if I'm correct, you don't actually room with any internationals, right?
No.
So do you feel like that kind of takes away from the experience of St. Paul a little bit?
Yeah, but yeah, I do. I feel like if you really want that experience to like live with internationals, then you can go after that, but I'd just rather room with my friends and spend time with them.
I have one question. What way has international students affected you and like taught you something new?
Infected me. Norwegian chocolate has shown me that American chocolate is so inadequate compared to other countries, and that I'm going to move to Norway so that I can eat Norwegian chocolate every day of my life.
Well, that's awesome. Eunice, you can probably expand on that a little bit, more on foods and how they are different every place you go.
When you go to an international school, you get to try all kinds of new things. For example, you get to try different foods. That's my favorite part of going to an international school is trying the foods. I had 2 American and 2 international students take a survey of 3 questions. I think going to international school has helped me learn many new things about other cultures. I have tried Norwegian chocolate, which is my favorite chocolate ever now. And I've tried those little cinnamons in a bag from Norway, they're really good too. And I've tried some other stuff people will be cooking in the kitchen. I don't know what it's called. They don't tell me, but it's really good. And when asked if they like to try food from other countries, Dorcas, a sophomore from Ghana, said she likes to because trying new foods is cool and you might find one of your favorite foods. Mary Ray, a sophomore from Kansas, said yes because she likes trying new things and the food usually tastes good. And some other, OT said she's tried grout or porridge from Norway, and Guatemala nacho lime chips, and a lot of stuff from Taiwan because she's rooming with Willa from Taiwan. And Hope Mueller says she's had sushi and OT has learned to make Norwegian grout or porridge, and Yami has learned to make fried rice. And going to an international school, you get to try new foods, and it can be a benefit to everyone.
Okay, so I have one question, and I'm just wondering, have you ever tried any like international Chinese food? Has anyone ever cooked that? Yeah.
I think so, I don't know, sometimes I go down to the kitchen, people will be like, try this, I'm like, okay. So I'm not really sure exactly what I've tried.
I have a question. Do you know what your favorite type of food is yet?
No, I like them. I've liked almost everyone I've tried. I don't really know what my favorite is.
Do you think that the American versions of these foods are a lot different once you've tried the originals at the international
Yeah,
standpoint?
the international is so much better than what the
So I think we all can take away from that international food can be better than American food. Elizabeth, I hear you're gonna tell us a little bit on how languages change here at St. Paul's and how you've learned something new, maybe?
Yes, thank you, Jose. Language can be described as a barrier. You can either choose to leave it there or to break it down. And going to an international school means that you could have one of these two choices. Attending an international school can affect a student's perspective on the world and prepares them for the future. There are advantages as well as disadvantages to going to an international school with so many different languages. Some of the advantages are quite nice, such as picking up on a few words and phrases. As for me, I have learned to respond to much of what my roommate says in Mandarin, even though I can't say much of what she says yet, but I can understand what she's saying. And playing on sports teams is always fun with international students because after a while you get to pick up on what they're saying and the other team is super confused and it's really funny to just you guys can understand this. And like going to restaurants, you can order a meal in the certain languages, like El Patron, you can speak in Spanish, and you can speak in Chinese when going to China Dragon because you know how to say a few things. And other types of advantages would be you can hear the types of styles of music as well as movies in those languages. Like some girls in Mollerdorp love to blast music out of their doors, and you get to hear a lot of different types of styles and cultures. Also dealing with girls in the dorm, you can find some really cool shows or movies with subtitles that you might not have found otherwise, which is always really awesome because like some movies you would never have guessed even existed. And by hearing all of these new aspects to the culture, an international student from Norway commented that it is like a big pool of differences that you can swim through and experience. And although language can be very fun to like engage in, there are some disadvantages as well. One being that you might be hesitant to make friends with people that speak a different language or are not very well like accustomed to your language, so it's very hard to communicate. And when interviewing an international student from Taiwan, they said you can feel secluded or not included in the conversation.
Okay, I have a quick question. I was wondering if you ever had to remind an international student that was talking to you that you don't speak their language, because I find myself doing that with Ricky a lot. We just all of a sudden start speaking Chinese and I'm like, Ricky, speak English.
I've had to do that sometimes too. Sometimes they'll think I'm like another of their friends and start speaking in Chinese. Have you ever ended up being at a dinner table with just Norwegians?
Yes.
And then they talk in Norwegian when you're sitting there, and it's just like you nod and smile.
Pretty much, yeah. I've done that.
So going along with what Elizabeth did, I did some research on students here at St. Paul's, and I did it for the opposite side of the hand. I asked them if their English had improved at all here at St. Paul's throughout their years. I interviewed a few students you might know, such as Jesse, Benny, Ricky, Dieter, Adrian, Kevin, and Eddie. And I asked them one question, simply, has coming to St. Paul's helped your English grow? And 9 out of the 10 that I asked said yes. And I kind of found that quite surprising that 9 out of 10 of them thought that they did. I assumed 10 out of 10 would think, but someone didn't think that his English had improved. But I assumed that's because he wasn't really communicating. And I know that's 9 out of 10 students, and we have a ton of international students here. But I believe that 90 to 95% of the students who are international would say yes if they have learned anything while coming here to St. Paul's that has helped their English in a way. I also asked the same students in what ways has being here helped you improve your language, and all 10 of them mentioned that chatting with friends and like just speaking English with other students here at St. Paul's has help their general communication and help them get rid of their accent a little bit, or like help them get the American accent in a little bit. And they also mentioned how English classes has helped them, and some of them don't like English classes, let me tell you, but in one way or another it helped them. 8 out of 10 of them said that taking classes here had expanded their vocabulary and helped them pronunciate words correctly. And I asked them how many of them do they think would be using English in their jobs to come in the future. And 9 out of 10 of them said they would probably be using English. And I feel it's good that they come to like a school here in America, because English is such an international language now that it's hard to not go somewhere where someone doesn't speak English, or like not, when you come to America, most of us speak English and not all of us speak like Chinese or Mandarin or something like that, so you kind of have to adapt. And I feel like a lot of people are coming here to America to get the American dream and try to adapt to our lifestyle. But does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I actually have one. So you said that a lot of them feel like that the English classes here have helped them.
Mhm.
So do you think that we should be grading them as hard as the domestic students in the English classes? Because I know some of them have a really hard time passing. I know a few of them actually been held back 2 years.
I feel like the only way for them to truly learn is by putting them up to American student standards, because that gives them the push or the urge to want to graduate. And yes, it's going to be hard, because I'm sure if I went to China and tried to learn Chinese, it would be super hard. But it would also make me want to put in the extra effort to make sure that I did graduate, and to like push myself to be better at their language, you know?
So you do think that like we should grade them just the same?
Yes. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Madison, I hear you'll be telling us about how hard it can be to understand accents.
I feel like by going to St. Paul's and familiarizing yourself with the different accents that you hear from different languages, I feel like it's easier to understand international people speaking English, because I have found out recently that it's sometimes very hard for people to understand international people speaking in English because of their different accents that they have and the different ways that they pronounce our words. I feel like since we are with a bunch of different international people, that we can familiarize ourselves with those accents, and it makes it a lot easier to understand them. I asked a couple of our students, I asked Justin Mueller, and he agreed that he does find it easier to understand international people speaking English than before he went here. Caroline Hagan also agreed with that statement. That's all I have.
I can definitely agree, because talking to a lot of students such as like Benny or like Ricky, their accents used to seem so deep, especially freshman year. I couldn't understand anything they'd say in English. But I kind of adapted to that, and like adapted to the way they say stuff in English. Yeah.
So I also have a question. So you interviewed American students, already English-speaking students, but you didn't actually put in anything about international students. Do you think that they kind of understand English a little bit better than also the other languages? Because they also have that barrier where they don't know English as well, so they're going to have to decipher English and then also decipher the accents from other countries.
I didn't get the view on international students understanding other international students. Jose talked about international students understanding English better, but my focus was really on us being able to, like, English-speaking students being able to understand international students speaking English, because it is very difficult for some people that aren't used to hearing those different accents.
I have a question. How much better do you think you would be preparing the real world for like going to an international school and hearing during those differences?
I don't know if it would really help you in an international school in America. It would help you a lot, but going to international school overseas, it may not help you as much because they're still going to speak their native language. They may not make it easy on you and speak English while you're there. So, but I feel like if you, in life, it will help you because, especially in America where you have a bunch of different accents, it'll help you understand them better. So I feel like it does help you prepare for your future.
Well, is there any more questions for the panel?
I have a comment on what we were talking about earlier, if we should grade students differently in English because they're from a different country. I think that would be unfair to any American students that have really bad grammar skills because of where they're from. Like, I know that since I'm from, southern Missouri, the Ozarks, that people talk with terrible grammar, it is the worst thing ever. And so when I came to St. Paul's, they were talking about all these things that I'd never heard of in my entire life, and it was a real struggle for a while. But then, I got used to it, and now I'm fine. So I think that if we do that to international students, it will push them harder to become better English speakers.
Well, now, I'd like to open questions up to the audience, so does anyone have a question for anything we spoke over today? Isaiah, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question for Elizabeth, since hers was about language. So what is your favorite language?
I've never thought about that before. I guess I would say English because I can speak it fluently, but I'm studying a lot of other languages, so I guess the ones I'm studying I like too, but I don't know, probably English.
What ones are you studying?
Well, I'm on Mandarin and Spanish at the moment, and I'll be taking German next semester, so.
Madison, since everyone else on the panel lives in the dorms and you are a day student, do you think that being a day student maybe takes away from that experience? Like, everyone else can talk about their experience of international life in the dorms, but do you think that could put up a bigger barrier for you in between other international students?
I feel like it does, but I feel like there are a lot of other barriers. Like, my freshman and sophomore year, I spent a lot of time in the dorms, even though I don't live in the dorms. So I think it's really, you have to take it upon yourself if you want to spend time, more time with international students. If you really want to surround yourself in that experience, it's kind of upon you to do that. But I do agree it does make a barrier because I don't live with them, but I also get a lot of that experience in the classroom. So I feel like I still get to be involved in it.
Cody?
From my perspective on the take it easier for the international students who lives here. So I think the class should take easier for them because like Noel said, the grammar is really hard to study. Even I've been here for 3 years, but it's still really hard for me to catch up with the American students, of course. And the accent on the international is a little bit hard for the students to, because a lot of things together to study at the time, because English and accent of for the international students who listen and studying at the same time, if it's grade at the same grade, then it's really hard for them to catch up, and it can make them stressful. So yeah, that's just my comment on that.
Yeah, and I guess you have a different view on it considering you are an international student and you have gone through the struggles. And I personally can't say that I have, because English is just my first language, so that's a good perspective to look at. Vera?
Okay, so going on, this is a comment. Going on Noel said, being from different parts of the United States, Clay and Eunice, I think you guys are from Kansas. And Noel, you're
Not in Kansas anymore.
Elizabeth, you're from Illinois. It does kind of depend where you come from, so your grammar is a little bit off. But I think learning in it, striving to learn, like the new grammar stuff, where ain't isn't actually a word, it's a little difficult, but it's alright.
Yeah, and going off that, where I went to elementary school, we actually didn't have a very good, English department, and so I had no idea what diagramming and, I barely knew what any of the nouns and adjectives were, because I didn't come from this grade school, so I wasn't, introduced to it until freshman year.
Yeah, and like, when I came to school here and I realized that most people don't actually use ain't as a word, my mind was blown, like, actually.
Questions? What do you think the administration of the school can do to help? I mean, I know that the international students and the English students get along really well, I get that. But is there anything the school administration or school can do to help both sides of this? Learn to listen to each other better or understand each other better?
In my opinion, I think it should be more of a rule to kind of, and I'm not trying to get offensive, but to kind of have the internationals not speak in their language, because that creates barriers for not only the Americans, but also like if the Chinese students are talking in their language to each other, then also the Norwegians aren't gonna understand that as well either. But since we all come to St. Paul, we all obviously know, or we're supposed to know English, and so if there's just that rule there, then I feel like that could allow closer relationships in between each other and kind of a more close-knit student body.
And in the dorms, they could try to have people, like, they could try to do more international domestic rooming together to mix them more.
Because I know as a faculty substitute coming in, I have a hard time understanding, like you were saying, the different students, what do you call it? Accents or whatever, and I have to listen closely and then I have to ask them to repeat it again, because it's very difficult for me to catch it said 3 years.
Go ahead.
Well, you guys were saying that languages, that we shouldn't be allowed to like speak your own language, but also like you come here and there's only a few people that speak your like native language, so I think we should be allowed to speak that because we don't want to lose it, and you're gonna be here for like a full year.
Yeah, but also, we could be walking down the hall and, there's a group of international students from the same area, and I don't know about you guys, but me, I don't want to break into that conversation because I don't know what it's about, so I'm not going to go up and approach them because I just feel like, they're speaking their own language, they don't want anyone else to come in.
I agree
So
with you.
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
That they should be able to speak their own language. We do have rules that in class they are supposed to speak English, so if they follow that rule, then that shouldn't really be an issue. But I feel like we as English-speaking students need to humble ourselves and get off our high and mighty horse. It is very hard for them to come to America into a new language, and we don't really make it easy on them. We don't, we speak louder instead of slower. We don't enunciate our words. So I feel like there's a lot that we could do to help them and make them want to speak more English instead of going off into their international cliques and speaking their own language.
But also I think we should keep it as a rule in the class because like a teacher, like how a teacher feels when some international students are speaking to each other, not the teacher, when like the teacher could help them or they could be speaking bad about someone and the teacher didn't know. And like the point of coming to a school in America is to learn English better. So like in the dorms or like outside of school, I feel like they should definitely be free to speak their own languages, but in school, that's why they're here. They're here to learn English, so I feel like in classes they should speak English.
I liked what Madison had to say about the fact that we don't make it very easy. I've moved as a young adult to a foreign country and lived there for nearly 20 years, and I didn't speak the language, so I know what that feels like. And I think it's really important to encourage in the classroom to speak the language, but occasionally students will speak English, but occasionally students will need to explain something to each other. And, it can be very, very lonely when you're in a culture where you don't have a lot of people who speak your language. And so there's things that you miss, and I would just it's interesting to me, because there's six of you sitting there. Do any of you speak another language at all? Like, really speak a language? If somebody were to come up and have a conversation with you, how many of you know at least please and thank you and how are you doing today in any other language that is spoken regularly here? Like, we have a number of students from China, we have a number of students from Norway, we have a number of students from Slovakia each year, you know, things like that. And I think it's really important because it also breaks down the barrier when Americans make a really concerted effort to try to understand. Language is the most basic part of our culture, right? If you don't have language, if you can't communicate, it's very, very difficult. And that for me was the biggest struggle when I moved abroad, because I felt like I could not express myself verbally. And you can have, you know, music, and you can have hand gestures, and you can have food and all of those things, and laughter and smiles, and that's all important as well. But actually using words, that's just the basis of our culture. So I think it's important to make an effort as well, and I think as an administration, we can do that. I'm certainly gonna do that with the choir tour.
I feel like that a problem with the American students, you know, fluidly speaking with the other, or like understandably speaking with the other foreign students in their language, is that we, like the Norwegians, I heard Knut last year, he said they start learning English in kindergarten. And we aren't brought up like that, so when you stick us in a class in high school, and that's our first, you know, endeavor for another language, then it's gonna be very hard for us.
It is.
Even if we do try, it's gonna be extremely hard.
Well, and I'm not talking about speaking fluently, but even being able to say a handful of things, it breaks down a lot of barriers. I think it's something that we could do a lot better at. And I'm just speaking from personal experience. If you've never actually lived abroad, and I'm sure Anna can underscore that, or a couple of the other international students, it's challenging. It's more challenging than any of you guys probably realize.
Yeah. Cody?
My question, I have a question. What if the students, a lot of students came here, and they're really shy, or sometimes they choose to be unsocial? Like, what are you guys thinking of, like, how to break them, like, to not be shy anymore, or like communicate with others to help them in English accent, listening, you know, stuff like that?
I feel like as a student body, we should all be more open to talking to each other, like international and American. I feel like we don't integrate enough.
Students and faculty, tomorrow we will have our beautification day. It is a dress down day. Please use modesty with your dressing tomorrow. Come prepared to help. Thanks.
Awesome. But I feel like as a student body, American and international, we don't integrate enough. And I feel like that's like, along with language, that's another barrier, is that we want to stay in our small groups that we have. And I feel like we can all make more of an effort to connect with each other, even if there is a language barrier, because like you can still have a friend and like not speak their language, but like you can understand someone without understanding someone. And I feel like that's what we need to make an effort to do.
And then also going off that, that's a lot of the time that's on the social life. That's a lot of what they're supposed to be doing, is kind of getting the students out and interacting with one another. So if they put on, you know, programs, like we've had dodgeball a few weekends and nobody shows up. So if the school is trying, if the student body, like social life, is trying to, you know, do that, and people don't show up, then that's more on the students themselves.
Yeah. And I like the effort that's being put to that, but if you're somebody who doesn't know very many people and you're a little bit shy, you're probably not in that kind of setting gonna go into a group setting. Some people are, but the majority of people aren't. I'm just saying that. That's been my experience as well. Those relationships tend to develop one-on-one. So that's and one good way to do that is with food. Food is always a good thing, yeah. I feed international students.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today. Ms. Marsh, thank you for bringing you and your band. Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Miller, thanks again for coming. I hope we were able to tell you guys our perspective on how international students or international schools affect students all around the world. And I hope that you see the advantages that St. Paul's has for each and every one of us. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I'd like to